Yes. Okay, that will be
Company for 3 years. Great, great. Well, I think that's everything. Oh, yeah, just one more thing. Where are you from?
I'm from London.
Yes, yes, but where are you from?
I was born in Surrey.
Okay, I don't mean like sorry. I mean like
Guildford.
yes. So you don't seem like you're from Guildford.
Okay, you got me.
There we go.
I was born in Cobham. I just tell people I'm from Guildford, to be cool.
Ah, right. Yes. I mean, where are your family from specifically?
Specifically, Vincent Road.
No, I mean, where are your parents from?
Mum grew up by the big Tesco's.
Yeah, before that.
She lived in Woking for a bit.
Before that?
Brighton Polytechnic. She dropped out though, so it doesn't really count.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, way, way back.
You mean where she was conceived? Knowing Granny and Grandad, probably the Premier Inn.
No.
No, you're right. That wasn't built until the 90s.
Where are your grandparents from?
They still live by the big Tesco's.
What's your background?
Musical theatre.
Where are you from originally?
You mean which hospital?
No, no. Why are you brown?
Bit racist, that.
well. This is my story of my life, and this still happens within the recruitment process, which is such a shame. And yeah, I was wondering before I will go to the next slide. Yeah, if you have the same experience as well, because I'm from I have family in the US. I'm from Europe, but I was wondering if you have the same experience during a recruitment job. So can you please share your thoughts or your experience in the chat? And Alice loved the video. Yes, it's very English humor. There's no one, so let's continue then. So I already mentioned, so this happens a lot as well because and they always ask me where I'm coming from. So I'm Dutch, and uh, and yeah, it's not relevant for the job. So questions about the age, gender, ethnicity, social background, and really are not allowed in the Netherlands. And it's very important, yeah, to know that if you get those questions, it's not relevant for the job, and it's also discrimination. So if this happens, then it's very important that to speak out loud that it's yeah, not relevant for the job, of course. And what also happened with, if you talk about racism and discrimination, is hiring the same people who looks like the manager or even the team. So so not inclusive recruitment. For example, I experienced discrimination as a candidate. So where you're coming from the game, well, that was the same. But as a recruiter, I can say, okay, it's not allowed. But I can imagine it's very hard for that. But as a recruiter, I also get the requests from the managers that they don't want to hire specific persons. For example, I had I had a client in the high tech sector, and one manager doesn't want to hire Indian people because he had bad experience. Well, first of all, I will never accept racism, discrimination, and even if it doesn't mean that I don't get business. I mean, my value is more important than saying yes to a racist request. So it for me, it's important to understand first. Okay, why doesn't he? It was a he, by the way, to not hire Indian people before I will start with a discussion. So my goal at the end is to create awareness that, yeah, he should hire everyone, including Indians or Dutch people or other Asian people, because it's very important to have an inclusive team. But then you have the organization, because hiring people is one, but accepting and respecting that's even more important. So even if an Indian person is hired, it doesn't mean that he's included. So what happens in the Netherlands a lot is, making offensive jokes and mocking accents. And I have a really good example from the Netherlands, because last year there was a JCI Impact Summit in the Netherlands, and someone was mocking, and he said Asian accent. So, but he was mocking a Japanese accent. That was online, and what happened is someone sent it to a platform. So I will tell more about the platform. It's about a discrimination towards Asians, and then people were really pissed off, because this is a serious and racist incident, and which led to start within the Diversity and Inclusion Committee in the Netherlands as well. The quizmaster who did it, he apologized, but unfortunately it still happened a lot in the Netherlands, and Dutch people in general are very direct. So so they make offensive jokes, and if you tell them, okay, it's racist, then they could be feel offensive as well. But if you spend time in the creative dialogue, they will understand that. But that is the challenge in the Netherlands as well. And that's the colonial way of thinking in the Netherlands. And Black Pete is the best example. Ignoring people who are different, that also happens a lot. For example, is someone from Asia, an Asian expat, so I'm not talking about me. We'll move to the Netherlands, and he or she is hired in a team, and doesn't matter if it's for JCI or for organization, but then the person will be ignored because he or she doesn't speak Dutch, or the person is differently than the Dutch people as well. And denying racism and discrimination, I already mentioned about the Dutch people. That happens a lot as well, and that's my experience as well. So when I'm not afraid to speak out loud about it, but it happens a lot that they tell me, okay, Diane, it's just a joke. Diane, it's not racist, or it's discrimination. Or Diane, can you please explain why it's just racism? Well, I can explain it because I work in HR for 15 years, so I can mention the Article 1 in the Netherlands, and other examples why it's not. But for the people who don't know that, that's even harder to say that. Last but not least is the white privilege, and I'm not. I'm talking about the colonial mindset of the white Dutch people. So even if they don't have bad intentions, most people they have good intentions, they are not aware of the white privilege. So, for example, if they give advice to someone who's Asian, or they make jokes about it, or they ignore racism or discrimination because they're not aware, or Black Pete because it's a national day for the children. It's very the most important thing is to create the white privilege awareness to the Dutch white people. And now slowly many white people, they understand it much better, but you have to invest a lot of time to let them to understand. So I would love to hear your thoughts about it at the end. What you think about it. I also have many experience with that, because in the Netherlands and also European level, I talk with white people and to create awareness about their white privilege. But before you would do that, it's very more important to understand them first, why they are thinking about it, before you would take action. And my best example is my white husband, who's aware about the white privilege. So years ago, he's against racism and discrimination, but sometimes it's very hard for him, how it is to be discriminated or to experience racism, and you have to invest a lot of time. the best practices. I'm talking about recruitment organizations, and not only in my professional life, but also in JCI. Most people, they would like to work with people who look like yourself or your team. The most important thing is, and no matter if it's JCI or an organization, your own organization, is what are you missing in the team? Because you need a diverse team. And why do you need diverse team? Because you need all the competences, and they're way more productive. So there are many researchers, and the latest one was a racially diverse management boost productivity from 2020. So it is proof that the diverse team are more productive. They make more revenue, and they attract more talents from everywhere. And focus on the strengths and the motivation of the person as well. And I have an example from my own work. I'm working in IT. So many people with autism, or people who have an other culture background as well, or both. It's very good to learn what their strengths are, but also what their motivation is, instead of focusing, oh, does the person fits in the team first? Because someone from Vietnam or the Philippines or India, they have a cultural background, and if you only check, oh, is the culture fits, then you only hire Dutch people. So it's also good to check, okay, what are the strengths, what is the motivation, because it's all about learning about other people as well. And always say no against racism, and no matter if you're a candidate or a recruiter. So I always warn all the recruiters, always say no, because racism is never good. And if Neil already mentioned, you're a good leader if you include every person. I agree with him. You are a good recruiter if you include every candidate, and even if the candidate has a totally other background. And last but not least, if people knows that you exclude people as a recruiter, that can damage your career. And everything is online now, and you can write reviews about recruiters on glassdoor.com. So I think it's never a good idea. Now, if you talk about the organization, so it's very important to speak out loud against racism and discrimination. I've learned from Yvette that in Canada it's totally different than in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, it's the racism and discrimination is more subtle. So in the US and in Canada, racism is more in your face. And then it looks like that you don't have racism in Europe or in the Netherlands, but it's more subtle. So sometimes you are thinking, is this okay? They deny it's racism because it's not in your face, but at the end it's racism. So it's still important to speak out loud and make sure that the HR or similar department knows the situation as well. And during the JCI Impact Summit last year, there was also a trust person within JCI Netherlands, and I had contact with them because I think it's very important to create awareness for this incident. But I want to have support from the Netherlands as well, and also create awareness in the organizations that this is not good and that I would never accept that. And there was a discussion in the beginning, because it is very hard to tell that mocking an accent is very racist. Now they know that. But I told the national president in the period, I would like to discuss with you, but there's one thing. If we do a statement on behalf of the chapter, I will always mention racism or discrimination, one of the two words, but I will never deny it. So that's very important to mention that as well, even if they say, oh, it's not racism, it's not discrimination. So create awareness about recruitment and discrimination as well. So I mentioned the research, but also why it's better to have an inclusive recruitment and say no to discrimination. So if a hiring manager asks, Okay, I don't want Indian candidates, never expect that, but create awareness why it's good to include all the people, including the Indians. Creating policies and taking actions. Policies are important, so if it happens again, but you have to take actions as well. And that's very important that an HR similar department will support you, or other people will support you as well. In the Netherlands, we have platforms about the racism towards Asians. So they call it Asian Raisin and broodje kaas met sambal. So the people within these organizations are Dutch people of Asian background, but people from all over the world are following the pages. Asian Raisin is more about creating Asian hate in general. Broodje kaas met sambal, I will translate it. That's cheese sandwich with sambal. That's create on Instagram to show the real cases. And unfortunately, the JCI Impact Summit of the Netherlands is still on the platform. But if someone else will write racist post, or there's a sort of video, so they're all posted on Broodje Kaas met Sambal website to create awareness as well. And this has such a big impact. So Heather, I don't know how many time I have.
We should probably wrap up your speech right away so we can keep on time. But yes, thank you so much.
Great. So yes, I always finish because I would like to discuss with you guys about your experience with racism and discrimination during job interviews or at work or even JCI. And I would like to hear example and see how can we create a solution together, because I have best practices, I have a vision, I have many solutions for the JCI Europe D&I committee for this year and next year. But at the end, we have to do it together.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Diane. Hopefully we have some time at the end that we can talk a little bit about that in the recruitment process. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up we have Reg Ruffles, and I will just talk about her bio quickly and then we will have her speak. Reg Ruffles enables teams and individuals to resolve issues and to work better together. She has been an IT professional for over 14 years with experience in various roles such as software developer, tester, product owner, Scrum Master, and engineering manager. She is currently an applications development manager in UPS, the Netherlands. She also served as president of JCI Amsterdam International from the mid-2018 to 2019 and is now a Rotary Club The Hague Metropolitan member. Having moved to the Netherlands in 2014 from the Philippines, Reg has a unique perspective of what it's like to be an Asian woman trying to succeed in Europe and in industries such as IT and logistics, which has been traditionally male-dominated. She will share her experiences living in the Netherlands on aspects such as work, society, and community work, as well as talk about what she believes are important in order to build a more diverse and inclusive future. Thank you so much, Reg. You can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Heather. All right, so I see somebody from JCI Philippines here. I actually put some Filipino text in my presentation as well, so let me know if anything looks grammatically incorrect. I've been too used to English for the last 7 years. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about what it's like to be a Filipina in the Netherlands. And a lot of this is my personal experience with some statistics and some studies that I've read throughout the last couple of months. So a little bit about me. Heather already mentioned quite a lot. I took some logos of the different companies that I've worked for, as well as the different JCI chapters actually. So I've moved around. I've been in three JCI chapters. I ended with JCI Amsterdam International, and now I'm currently in the Rotary. The interesting thing is both JCI Amsterdam International and also Rotary Club The Hague Metropolitan, they're both English-speaking chapters here in the Netherlands. The interesting with Rotary though is that there are actually four, I think almost five clubs that are English speaking versus where in JCI we only have one right now. So just a short snapshot, a little bit about me. And then a little bit of statistics and history lesson to give some context to the current situation in the Netherlands and why certain things are the way they are. So I think this picture is a pretty good snapshot of what it is about the Netherlands and what it is about colonialism that impacts my not day to day, but my life and the life of my friends who are of Asian descent. So here is your white Dutch colonial master, and a very small in the background is the female brown slave, basically. And when you think about it, you look at this picture and you think, hey, that's a 1600s, 1700s. True in terms of the picture, but when you think about, for example, when Indonesia gained their independence, Indonesia only gained their independence in 1949, which is not very long ago in the grand scheme of things. So basically, the colonial mentality or the colonialism, that is still in a way part of relatively modern history. And when I think back to my own history as a Filipino, where we were colonized by Spain for 333 years, there's a lot of similarities with regards to just the way things work, where whenever it is white/Western, it's quote unquote better, when that's not actually true. But that's just part of history. That's just part of your cultural mindset as well. And it's very difficult to get out of that mindset. It's very difficult to step out of that. So that's a little bit of history. But now let's look at the current situation. This is a 2020 census. I actually saw the 2021 one, but because it's not end of the year yet, I decided to take the 2020 population. So this is the stats about population by origin, and again shows a little bit of the makeup of the Netherlands. More than actually 75 point something, 75% of the people in the Netherlands are of Dutch descent, of course. But when you look at the numbers, they're pretty small in terms of other origins. The biggest one is actually Europe, that are not of Dutch descent, so about 10.5%. Then you have Asia, then you have Americas, so including Latin America, and you have Africa. And Oceania, which is Australia, you've got less than a percentage. So when you see this, what I infer from this picture is it's not a very diverse country. And you see that we of non-Dutch descent are basically less than 25% of the total population. And that's also why in a lot of places, I am sometimes, one of few Asian people that they see. And a little bit more. There's no SDG related to, let's say, racial discrimination, but there are SDGs about, one is about gender equality, and one is about inequality in more general terms. And in 2018, in terms of women in senior and middle management positions, less than 25% were women. And if I look at this part here, how much of the population has felt that they've been discriminated against, it's almost 9%. you might think it's not that high in terms of the total population, but I look back at this, this graph and thinking about, well, when you think about how little diversity there is, if most, probably not all, but if most of that 8.7% comes from this population, then that's pretty significant. And a couple more, I didn't put this in, so I have a stat on women, but another statistic is earlier this year, around, I think it was April, there was a study done about discrimination in housing. And it was discovered that 1 in 3, so if a landlord, for example, if I say I'm renting my apartment, but I do not want to rent to foreigners. So if somebody called a real estate company and said that, they found that 1/3 of real estate companies would actually say, yes, sure, I'll do that. I will not rent to foreigners. They also did a study where they would use it was a Muslim and also Indian and Turkish, so different kinds of nationalities, names from those nationalities to see if they could get how they would be able to view a house. And they found that in the bigger cities like The Hague, Amsterdam, the people who were refused viewing because of their non-Western name was about 8%. You move out of the bigger cities and that went up to 20%. So 20% of people would be refused viewing a house viewing just because of their name. And when I read that, it was like, wow, I was expecting it, but not quite expecting it. It was a shock to me that it was that big, but it does happen. So these are all, you could say, general information. What about my own experience? And do want to emphasize that what I mentioned here is about my own personal experience. I'm not here as a representative of the companies that I work for. It's my representing myself. What's been interesting with work is these are pictures from my previous company actually. Given COVID, I don't have pictures of my current companies. I joined them a few months ago. But what I loved about my previous company is the diversity. So you can see here that there's me. She's from Guatemala originally, but she works in Copenhagen. He's Indian working in the US. He's Hong Kong Chinese working in the Netherlands, and we're all multicultural. We come from somewhere, work somewhere else, basically. And it's the same, the picture that we see here. So from a company perspective, it is pretty diverse. And then I moved to UPS, moved to a different company. And it's been pretty interesting because, for example, in the management team, in the department that I'm in, I am the only woman in a team of 8. The rest are men, but also interestingly enough, I am the only Southeast Asian. There's one more Asian person, guy. The rest are of European descent. And it's very interesting when you think about diversity of thought, diversity of thought, diversity of expression. And sometimes I feel like that's why they brought me in. Let's get a little bit more diversity here. Not to mention that I am a pretty good manager, if I do say so myself. But sometimes it feels like, am I the token female? And I check off multiple boxes, Asian, female. But so what's been actually my experience so far? And a lot of it has to do with unconscious bias. At least that's been my experience. It's not that people are malicious. It's not that they're, let's say, aggressively racist. It's not that. But there is so much casual racism and casual sexism that I encounter. I wouldn't say every day, but I do encounter, let's say, more frequently. As an example, we were having a people session. And this was the management group. We were having a people session. When we have a people session, this is about people that are performing really well. So we as a management team, we talk about what kind of support this person needs to be able to advance in their career. So that's the kind of discussions we have. You would think pretty positive discussions. One of the managers in my team basically said something like, well, he's Indian, so he wants to advance in his career. It's like, wait a minute. It doesn't mean that just because he's Indian that means that he wants to advance. I'm Filipino, I want to advance in my career. That has nothing to do with race. And in this case, I messaged him offline, said to him, hey, I wanted to give you some feedback about what you said earlier. And the good thing was with him, he took it really well. He was not aware of what he had said. He wasn't aware of his own unconscious bias, of course, that's why it's unconscious. He wasn't aware of it. He was thankful that I pointed it out in a private, in a private setting, but he was thankful that I pointed it out because he didn't want to show, or not so much he didn't want to show, but he did not really think about what he said. He didn't think about the impact of what he said because there's a lot of Indians in the management team as well. But we had a really good discussion about it. But basically, it's an example of the casual racism because of unconscious bias that I encounter in work and sometimes outside work as well. So that's a pretty big thing actually. This is also because of the lack of diversity, and we're doing quite a lot related to this, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. So next as well, a little bit about my social life. I think the difficulty for me, so most of my friends are people who look like me. They're also Filipinos, they're also Asians, or fellow expats. Interestingly enough, everybody in this table except for me are British. So, but we're all expats. This picture is a little bit more interesting probably because she's Dutch and I think she is as well. But it's a hiking group, so I'm part of a hiking group as well. And what I find is it's easier to make friends with fellow expats, of course, because you share the same experiences. You have the same, maybe not quite all, because while I'm an Asian woman, they're white women, and the discrimination we have or the bias that we get thrown at us is slightly different or very different, but we share a lot of the same challenges and the same experiences. And I find that in social situations with a lot of the Dutch people that I meet, it's very difficult to make friends. And a lot of the friends that I do have who are Dutch are people like Diane who have that international mindset and who have a bit of a broader perspective as well. So it's very, very difficult. So yeah, most of the people I meet are also similar to me, which in a way I do want to try to interact more with others as well. But it's a struggle. It's always a struggle. And that actually also bleeds into JCI. So this is JCI Amsterdam International. I think this was in 2018, I think. So again, very diverse group. Diane's Dutch, Marcus is Dutch, Marion is Dutch, Peter is Dutch, and Martin is Dutch. Everybody else comes from different parts of the world. And here we are again. Thais is Dutch, there's me, there's Makiko's Japanese, and there's Diane. And then this was a project that I did in the Philippines for children. So trying to bring that up again. But basically, when I talk about community work, one of the challenges is, again, the lack of diversity in JCI, the Netherlands. Because we're like one English-speaking chapter, a lot of the national events are, of course, in Dutch. And I understand it. I definitely understand it. But it always feels like we need to push our agenda. We need to push, hey, don't forget about us. We're an English-speaking chapter. Most of our members are expats. We don't understand Dutch. Can you please also make sure that there's something for us? Plus, as the fact that there are other English-speaking, or not so much English-speaking chapters, but bilingual chapters. There are guests. How can you invite a guest when they can't even join in any of the programs? And so yeah, so the community, the difficulties I have with meeting people outside of work is also reflected actually in JCI, which I think is a shame. Like, I've had a situation where it was president's meeting, and I messaged the organizer to say, hey, can I please request that at least we try and speak in English, because otherwise, why would I bother to join? And she was fine with it. Most people were fine with it, but I got I actually did get pushback. I did get pushback from people who said, yeah, I already speak English the whole day in the office. I don't want to speak English during JCI time as well. And that's just what you experience. One thing I also wanted to mention about social life, and this was something touched on earlier. So, Asian hate crime. In general, before COVID, pre-COVID, outside of work and outside of places like JCI, it's actually not just outside, but in general, I feel safe living in the Netherlands. I never experienced any, I never experienced that feeling of insecurity when walking down the street late at night. That never used to happen to me. However, what used to happen, even pre-COVID, was I would have people shouting "ni hao" to me, especially when I'm with my Chinese friends, and it's like totally wrong culture. But also, like, you're not shouting "good morning" or whatever to other people. Why are you shouting "ni hao" to me? I don't even know you. So I would get that, but it was like, you ignore it, you move on. When COVID happened, there was actually a couple of instances of Asian hate crime here as well. And I have to say, I have, in a way, thank God for the face masks, because there were periods of time where I would walk on my own a little bit later, and I did not feel safe anymore. I did not feel safe anymore because I'm Asian, and there was a spate of hate crime here. And that's not something that I thought I would say or feel living here. And I have Chinese friends who, especially during that period, were afraid to leave their house. Like, they didn't even want to leave their house. How, I think about that, and I talk with them about it, and it was just, there was so much fear going on. I do think it's gotten better, but it's I always want to say Asian lives matter as well. We're still here, we're visible. Look at us, basically. Yep. So, but what can we do? I don't want to end on that note. So let's go into what can we do, and what have I also tried to do in my work life and outside of work as well. I have basically five main ideas, or not even ideas, five main things I try to do myself. And the first one is role model. And when I say role model, I also mean this starts with educating yourself, because we all have unconscious bias. Just because I am a minority, part of a minority here, doesn't mean I don't have my own unconscious bias. So we also need to be aware of our own unconscious bias, educate ourselves about other minorities, about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So educate ourselves, but also role model that. So if I don't want people making light of the Asian accent, or shouting "ni hao" to me, or whatever the case is, I need to also role model that. I need to be also aware of how I talk, what I talk about in instances, especially when I'm standing in as a leader. How do I talk? Is it, do I make others feel excluded, or do I make them feel included? So that's something that I try to be aware of, and I think we also need to think about. We need to role model behavior that we also want to see or reflected back at us. The second thing for me is representation. And I was in a diversity, equity, and inclusivity event that UPS had I think last week actually. And one of the vice presidents is a Black woman, and she's a vice president in a very male-dominated industry as well. And she said, volunteer in places where nobody else looks like you. You know, go to places where you're the only one who looks like you. What she meant by that, and what I mean by that as well, is represent. Represent in your community, represent in a volunteer organization, in work, whatever the case is. Representation and represent yourself, they matter. They matter a lot. But that also means that it's hard to do things alone. When you go into a situation where you're the only person, only Asian person, whatever the case is, sometimes that's difficult. So try and form I say alliances, but really form a team. So one of the things I'm also doing now is I joined the women's leadership group in our district in UPS, and we talk about gender diversity, and we're trying to see how can we improve it and what can we do about it within the context of our region. So look for people who share the same values as well, and see what you can do, because doing it as a group, doing it as a team, you're stronger than doing it on your own. And that could also be JCI. The fourth thing that I would say is dialogue. And this is very important. And note that I said dialogue. And earlier, Neil said conversation. And it's the same thing. When you have a person, so Diane mentioned the Impact Summit. I was actually a little bit involved in that discussion as well. What was good about that is we had a conversation with the person who had done the racist action. So we had a conversation with him. And it was really good because it was two-way. It was a two-way dialogue. It wasn't just us saying, oh, this was bad, don't do it again, whatever. It wasn't that kind of discussion. It was also him sharing his perspective and him sharing his experience. So it's a dialogue. It's a communication. But the last thing, yep.
So sorry, we have to wrap you up. We have one more speaker, and I want to have enough time for some questions. I'm so sorry, but thank you so much.
It's the last item as well that I have. Don't worry.
Okay.
I just want to add on one last thing, and that's self-care. Because when you do any of the above and you feel unsafe in what you're doing, or you feel at risk, disengage. Also, you need to learn and know when you need to disengage, because I think the most important part as well is you need to feel safe and confident in what action it is that you're doing. And that's it.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful presentation, and I think we really got to see some of the history of how this has begun with colonialism, and just the Netherlands is a prime example of what we also see in Canada, and definitely with COVID, we've seen the same kind of issues with the Asian community, and it was terrible, and I think it's still burning there's burning undertones still happening, and that's unfortunate, but there's so many ways that we can see that and try to move forward and help each other out. So thank you so much for your speech today.
Thank you.
Next, we are going to go to Alice Chow, and I will say a quick bio, and then you'll be able to take the floor. Thank you. Alice Chow Janu is a CAP behavior consultant and writer based in Dublin. Alice is originally from Hong Kong, lived in Paris, and has been living in Dublin for 14 years. She's one of the first Asian experts featured on Irish social media regularly. She is passionate about promoting Asian culture to the Irish public and often leveraging her media exposure to shine a positive light on all things Asian. She hosts a best-selling food tour where she showcases a variety of Asian cuisine available in Dublin. She also does stand-up comedies where the subject of unconscious racism often makes the audience laugh in a slightly uncomfortable manner. She is planning to host the first ever Cantonese speaking talk show on Near FM in Dublin in 2022. During this conference, she will share how to break into the business cycle as an Asian person in a predominantly white country. Thank you so much. Feel free to begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So that's me. You know a little bit about me already. I'm going to share my slide. So welcome. So this is a little bit about me. You already heard the introduction. So I'm a cat behavioral consultant. One of the things is actually, I'm one of the first Asian experts who got featured on not social media, actually traditional media regularly, like TV, newspaper, everything. And a lot of times people ask me, how did you do that? And today I'm going to tell you the secret. How did I do that? How can I get into, you know, predominantly white media and, you know, and people don't even remember. Here's the key. People most of the time don't even remember they need to mention I'm Asian. They just said Alice. So how did that even happen that people feel I naturally supposed to be there? I also speak 4 languages. I'm married to a French Canadian, and this is the Canadian connection I have tonight. So yes, I'm originally from Hong Kong. And after I finished my university, I was living in Paris for a couple of years. And so I am quite aware of what happened on the continent. So for those of you from the Netherlands, all the stuff you mentioned, I know about them. I have experienced some of those. That's why I left. That's why I moved to Ireland, where it was, you know, when I moved here 14 years ago, it was like a cool up and coming country where they needed to hire a lot of foreigners because we were, the country was taking off. You know, the economy was taking off, and they needed a lot of foreigners in different sectors, for example, IT, pharmaceutical, etc. And, you know, being very walking stereotype, I was working finance because, hello. But very quickly enough, I started my own business, and a lot of people are like wondering, you know, how do you even do that? And would people be weird about you being an Asian business owner that is not, you know, a takeaway or restaurant, you know, something like that? So how do you even break the stereotype? How do people react to that? Turns out that people didn't react to that funny, because I just act like it's normal that I'm supposed to be here. And also, obviously, Ireland at the time was going through a very lucky time because there were just so many foreigners coming on the street of Dublin. Basically, you can hear so many different languages. There are 18 different nationalities in my son's class out of 30 students. So we just just arrived in a very good time as well. So according to the recent census, 1 out of 6 Irish resident is a foreign person, and 1 out of 4 birthing person is a foreign-born person. So basically, the reason I'm telling you about the birthing person, because that means that the kids in the future, they will be more and more foreign, and it's going to be a very interesting development. So disclaimer first, this is just my own personal experience and my own personal tips. I'm not saying this is the gospel and everyone should do that. It's just my experience sharing. How did I do that? I didn't go out to, you know, I think one of the things is when people think about racism, people immediately, the face drop. They feel like this is very serious subject matter. I'm not racist. I don't want to be racist. And you know, the voice, even the voice dropped down. It doesn't need to be this way. It doesn't need to be confrontational. It doesn't need to be heavy. especially if you're an introvert. For those of you who are Asian, you might be introvert, you don't want confrontation, and you're just sort of feeling very uncomfortable to tell people, hey, dude, this is racist. It's so uncomfortable. You don't want to be that person. So what can you do then? What else can you do? Loads of things. And today I'm going to list down all the stuff I've done. Not saying that you need to do all these. It's just examples that I've done. I've tested. It's fine. I'm unharmed. So maybe you can think about doing that. Number one is, we already talked about this, representation. So just act like you belong there and just be there. Sometimes, you see, we were talking about, I was taking notes, you see. We were talking about unconscious bias, but it goes both ways. The unconscious bias sometimes is us thinking that, oh, these people might not include me. You don't know. Now, you already, Heather already mentioned that I'm starting a radio show next year, the first Cantonese speaking shows possibly in the history of this country. I am to find Cantonese speaker to come on the show to talk to me. Do you know how hard it is? It's my own people saying no to me because they are uncomfortable. They're like, oh, don't ask me, ask the other guy. Why? You want people to include you. Now I'm including you. I'm giving you a platform. Some of these people are business owners. They can promote the business. They're like, but I don't know how to speak. My English have an accent. Who cares? I'm inviting you. But so this thing goes both ways. So I was on the national TV as an expert. They didn't even introduce me as the Asian woman. They just said that this is the cat expert. So that was a bit of a historical moment because a lot of people noticed that I was just introduced as the cat expert. And then again, I was just introduced as, a cat expert based in Dublin on the newspaper. Same thing here, another TV appearance, I was just introduced as a cat expert. I think this one, they didn't even mention where I'm from and where I live or whatever. It doesn't matter. It was all about a cat. And then this is the radio station where I'm going to start a talk show next year. I'm still trying to find more Asian people to come, but this should happen, okay? So I just jump into the opportunity because a lot of times I have Asian people asking me, why do you do that? Why do you do that? You're not afraid, or what if this and the other? You just don't know. Just say yes. And I also feel that it's my duty to be there because do you see another Asian woman? You don't. So there's me. That's it. Number two, education. Education doesn't necessarily need to be heavy, sit down, let's talk about racism. It doesn't need to be like this. It could be fun. I think the key here is to make it fun because when things are fun, people will just take in a bit more. It's not a heavy discussion. It's not a confrontation. For example, I will do school talks to my child's school every year around Chinese New Year. There's no mention of racism, whatever. I just bring them treats and teach them how to write Chinese and talk about different Chinese things. And for the girls, particularly in class, they're just happy to look at this beautiful dress. And I wear a different one every year. And then they are just looking forward to what is going to be the dress next year. So it become a bit of a novelty, a tradition in school now, is that every year we're going to look at Alice's dress. Now, if you think about it, a child growing up seeing an Asian woman in traditional dress once a year, how likely are these people going to be racist to my son? Less likely, because it become a normalized thing, right? So you can see they're writing Chinese. Some of them are actually quite talented. You can see they're actually doing a great job. It's beautiful to see. So you can see all these are white kids, right? More writing, and then we were doing Tai Chi. You see all different colors of kids. And it's not just educating the kids, I also educate the adults. So every year I will do every Chinese New Year, I will do different talks, could be food, could be different aspects of culture, maybe business etiquette, whatever, things that people find it interesting. Once they know more about it, there'll be less misunderstanding, there'll be less bias. And then, yes, I did actually break my rule. I actually did mention racism in this particular invitation. I was invited by an NGO to talk about racism during COVID. And so I did actually talk about racism for this kind of occasions. As I mentioned, it's so important to keep things fun, entertainment, because when people are entertained, they don't even know they're learning. They just accidentally learn, and then it doesn't feel heavy, it doesn't feel confrontational. For example, food, okay? I always believe that if all of us, everyone in the world, sit down to have food together, there will be no more wars, because we all love food, we all love the company, we all love the conversation. So food is another thing that connect with other people. So here is a dumpling demonstration. You can see I had so many different traditional dress. This is one of my strategy as well, because people just like to look at the beautiful clothes. It's a conversational piece. And then people are like, oh, where do you get that and stuff? So another dress. So this is a food tour, as you can see. You can see different colors of people. They're not all Irish. They all come to listen to me talking about how can you cook Chinese food at home? It doesn't need to be complicated. I have my personal recipe here. They can take home as well. And then I did a stand-up comedy routine where it makes people very uncomfortable about the stereotype they have on me. Especially, I rub it in by dressing like this. They expect, you know, a very quiet woman showing up. Turns out I'm swearing and stuff like that. And then they, you know, it challenged the stereotype. And some of the people, you can see that they are a little bit uncomfortable when I point out the problems. When people are laughing, people are learning faster. And also less defensive to think that, no, I'm not racist. I'm not saying you're a racist, but I don't work in a takeaway. And then people immediately going, oh, haha, yeah, hi. So I was also in another comedy sketch where is going to go on Irish TV. So this is me here. I only have 3 lines, so it's not anything major, but still representation. Again, also to break the stereotype that Asian women, you know, are quiet, because I was funny and sassy in there. And number 4, get involved. What it means by get involved with local politics. You can't change the country, you can't change the policies of the country if you don't get involved with politics. As simple as. It could be as simple as voting, but make sure you register to vote. Even as a foreigner, depending on where you live, you might be allowed to vote. I'm allowed to vote here, so I do every single time. Get involved with the local campaigns. So when we were campaigning for gay marriage equality, I took my baby and I marched with the Irish people. When you are with them, they feel you're one of them. Just as simple as that. You need to be involved with the local policies, involved with the local politics. And for information, I'm not Irish. In case you're wondering, I don't have Irish nationality, but even though I live here, it still concerns me. So I don't need to be Irish. And then this one is for reproduction rights. And I was also involved. Not only I was involved, I make these little badges. There's a cat theme because there are a lot of cat people. And it's for fundraising for the campaign. And of course, like Rich says, safety matters. So I didn't do the door-to-door knocking on the door and tell people about abortion thing, because with my face, it's going to be tricky. So what I did is I stayed on the other side of the campaign. I was doing fundraising. So safety obviously matters. But there's still always something you can do. You can support the Irish people to campaign. Again, here's the thing. I couldn't even vote for this referendum. I'm not Irish, but I campaign and help them to raise money. Again, you see the marching, the walk to the airport to showcase that I was somewhere here, to showcase to people that women have to take a plane to travel for abortion. So I joined into the walk. And then the referendum was successful. Now we have legal abortion in Ireland, and this is a celebration. So basically, to sum up, represent, educate, entertain, and get involved. It doesn't need to have a heavy conversation. It doesn't, you don't, sometimes you might not even need to mention the word racism because people are funny about any ism. Once you say any ism, they'll be like, oh, I'm not that. But there's so many things you can do, and you don't need to do all the stuff I do. Like, some people might not feel comfortable talking to the media. Some people might not feel comfortable putting themselves out there, but make dinner. I don't know, make dinner, invite somebody over, or bring food to the office. Celebrate your own holiday with the people in the office. Celebrate your own holiday with the kids in school. Every little helps. As someone who you might just want to do a little thing, but every little helps. You don't need to go out and protest and, be confrontational about it. Just don't sit and think that it's too complicated and I don't know where to start, and you end up doing nothing. So start somewhere. Just pick one thing that you feel you can make the little change and start somewhere. So you see, it's every little help, honestly. All the little stuff that I've done. You see, this is the celebration of the comedy sketch on TV. You can see I'm the only Asian person. And then at the comedy show I did online, you can see all these people laughing. Let me ask you, how likely are these people going to be racist to me now? And then these kids, how likely she's going to be racist to my son now? It's every little daily thing can make a big difference. So thank you very much. And this is how you can contact me if you want to carry on this conversation. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alice, for that wonderful speech. Nice and short and sweet, but definitely got to the point of what we all can do to do small things that can lead to much greater things when it comes to racism and diversity, and going from a more positive aspect, and challenging.
I'm a comedian. I am only allowed to speak 5 minutes each time normally.
People
will be like,
no, it's so good. It was great. There's wonderful things said there. Thank you so much. Okay. So I think we're a little tight on time, but I think right now we're going to open up the questions. I'll let Jasper take over, and he's going to probably take a couple of questions, and then maybe let the audience have a couple before we go back to the main room.
Great, sounds good. Thanks, Heather. So thank you so much, Dane, Reg, and Alice, for your inspiring and informative presentation. I'm sure our audience have like a bunch of questions they'd like to ask, and I think we only have 5 minutes, so maybe we'll see if we can get one question, and if we have time, we'll get another one in. So I encourage our participants to either type their message in their chat box here, or you can just unmute yourself and ask your question. So are there any questions? Okay, maybe I will kick this off. So so basically here in Canada, and it may be different in the Netherlands and in Ireland, there are strong human rights laws and systems to address discrimination. How can we enforce the laws and policies with regard to systemic racism towards Asian people? I'll open this up for our, our panelists to see if you'd like to answer this question.
Well, I think for me, it's also about representation in the government, in police, and whichever body is implementing these rules. There has to be representation. As an example, if you have a body, for example, abortion law, right? If you think about that, who's making these laws? These are men. Why would you make a law about abortion when you don't have women on the panel? So get representation. So there has to be like the voice of us has to also be there. So at least that's part of what I think would help.
Yeah, I'm into the Dutch politics because everything is in Dutch, and leadership by example is very important in this case. And in the Netherlands, there's a party by één in Dutch, and the leader is a black woman. So and so she shows a good example how she experienced racism and discrimination, and how we can tackle that. So I think that's very important, and create awareness. For example, the Dutch government, they create a policy for inclusive recruitment. So which questions can you ask and which not, and what happens if your recruitment is not inclusion? So that's a good step. We have a few steps to go because they need to implement that as well. Create more awareness about that.
Well, yeah, as I said, I don't experience much racism in Ireland officially, but still we have very little representation in politics. We only just recently have the first ever Asian person in any form of public, office, and she get loads of harassment all the time. So it's not hunky-dory here either. On day-to-day, yes, I very rarely have people making comments anymore in comparison to when I lived on the continent. But still, we just don't have a lot of Asian representative in all spheres, traditional media, TV. I'm probably one of the other, there might be two other people. So there might be 3 Asian person ever on TV. And then politics, there is only ever one. But I'm not sure this is because of Irish people. I think it has a lot to do with ourselves in the community. People just won't come out. Most people don't even register to vote. They don't follow the Irish news. They're still reading news in Chinese and stuff like that. This is also a problem. I'm trying to get people to register to vote until my face turned blue, but people are not listening to me. So it's something that we also need to do as a community. We need to talk to our own people.
And I think it's also important if you vote. I always vote on a woman of Asian descent, and because I think it's very important that women, and especially with a non-Dutch background, they're in the politics as well, because they can make an impact for sure, and no matter which level.
Great, thanks. I'm not sure, Heather, do you have a closing remark, I would say, before we head over to the main room?
Yes, I think, yes, we'll just wrap it up right here. I just want to thank you for the inspiring discussions. We are very honored to hear about your stories and ideas to combat racism and in the Asian community, and how we can move together into a future free of racism and discrimination. Again, I wish to thank each of our panelists, Diane, Reg, and Alice, for coming today and sharing their stories and graciously answering our questions. Now we're going to return to the main forum to share with the rest of the participants about our call to action. Thank you. All right, I think everyone, you could just use the blue button on the lower right-hand side of your screen to leave the room to go to the main forum.